28th May 2023 is a very important date for all IAS aspirants as the UPSC is all set to conduct the preliminary examination. It is on this date that your years of aspiration, months of hard work will be put to test. I'm sure most of you would be worried about your current affairs revision and practice. But you need not worry because we at BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, we shall be bringing back our flagship Target Prelims 2023 free crash course starting from the 24th of April. In these sessions, we shall be covering more than 900 important current affairs topics through MCQ-based discussions. These sessions will contain in-depth explanations and expert tips to help you ace the exam. As always, these sessions shall be free on our YouTube channel, and all you have to do is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you on the 24th of April.
Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. It is 10 a.m. once again, meaning that it is time for us to meet and discuss today's Hindu newspaper and pick out the most important news stories from the mains and from the prelims examination point of view. I hope all of you are doing good, and I really hope that all of you have made it a habit to join in right here on time. Also, I'm very happy to see that most of you take the homework given by me very seriously. I'm very glad to see that you do research on the homework question and leave that in the comment section of the video. That will be very helpful for the other aspirants as well. You can learn from each other's responses and see if you are right or wrong. So make sure you continue that habit as well. Now, before we go and start our session for today's Hindu newspaper analysis, there's a very important announcement. As all of you know, the Target Prelims 2023 crash course is ongoing. We are now entering the next phase. We are bringing this program live on our YouTube channel back from the 24th of April. This will be a program in which we will be covering 22 sessions, and all 365 days current affairs will be covered, revised through MCQ. There will be a subject-wise revision. Every single day there will be a live session from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. here on YouTube. So make sure that you attend all of these sessions from the beginning till the very end. This is the best way for you to revise holistically the entire year's current affairs. I want all of you to make a note of this schedule. As I said, the beginning will be on the 24th of April. So for the first 4 sessions, it will be Indian economy. Then we'll be covering Indian polity. Then we'll switch to environment ecology, then science and technology, international relations, government schemes, art and culture, places in news, report and indices, and then again the places in news. Please make sure that if you are serious about this year's prelims examination, you do not forget to attend each and every one of these sessions. As I said, this will be live, 22 sessions in total to cover your current affairs of the last 1 year in the form of MCQs. Do make a note of that as well. Now, let's come back to where we were. These are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion from the Hindu newspaper. We'll be starting our discussion with India's civil society organizations. If you look at the syllabus of GS2, in governance there is a topic that says the role of civil society organizations. That is why this article is important for us. The author here is talking about the role of civil services organizations. Also in the civil society, have these organizations been working well, or there are certain roadblocks in their working. Then we'll be discussing about how the Supreme Court in their recent judgment about the Media One news channel has actually ensured that the right to freedom of speech and expression is still secured in the country. Then we'll be discussing about what is happening in Nagaland with respect to their municipality election. Then coming in from the prelims point of view, we have 3 important news stories. First, Arunachal Pradesh is hosting a Buddhist meeting at a very significant place. That is a place where Dalai Lama, while entering India, took his first halt in 1959. Next topic, we'll be discussing about Nepal, how Nepal right now is actually in the middle of a 3-country struggle. India, China, and even the US is taking a lot of interest in Nepal. So what should the Nepal government do right now? What are their options? We'll be discussing that. And in the end, we'll be discussing about what are the latest developments in Yemen As you know, there are hopes right now that Yemen civil war or Yemen protest will come to an end because Saudi Arabia and Iran have reached a kind of a peace deal. We'll be discussing what that is and the prospects of peace in Yemen. So, without waiting any further, let's begin with the very first article. The first article for the day is based on civil society organizations, in short CSO. Now, what are civil society organization? Let's start with that. Civil society organization is a very broad term that includes a lot of organizations which are working apart from the government. For example, these can be NGOs, these can be pressure groups, these can be different types of associations. All these are civil society organizations. So organizations working in our society for various purposes. They, for example, may be working for the purpose of propagating education. They may be working, let's say, in favor of environmental concerns. They may be working for a certain group. They may be working as a pressure group. In short, those are civil society organizations. I can give you a very interesting example of a civil society organization, and all of you would actually remember that. Do you remember how the Lokpal bill was passed in India? Do you remember? When the Lokpal bill was passed in India in 2013, there was actually a group that had organized a huge India-wide protest. Because of that protest, the government came under so much pressure that it decided to pass the Lokpal bill. Do you remember the name of that group? Remember the name of that group? What group was that? That had organized all this protest at Jantar Mantar. There was Anna Hazare who was leading the protest. Which group was that? Okay, I don't want you to go away and Google it. Let me tell you the name. The name was India Against Corruption. Remember? The name of the group was India Against Corruption. IAC. This is a simple example of a civil society organization. A civil society organization is not connected to the government, but it is working in the society for the interest of the people. Either interest of the entire society or interest of certain groups of people. Those are civil society organizations. Now, what has happened is, as per the author who has written this article, he is actually being critical of the government. He is saying that the government right now is making sure that any civil society organization, especially those who are working against the government's interest, are either banned in India or they have a very hard time in working in India. According to the author, only very few civil society organizations right now are getting the government support. That is why it is a worrying time in India for the civil society organizations. For example, you would have also seen in the past few years, a lot of NGOs, for example, have been banned in India. Let's say, or I'm sure all of you would have heard of something called the Greenpeace. It was banned in India. There are many other organizations which are working in the civil society that have been banned by the government. Now, government obviously gives different arguments. Government says that no, they are not working in the interest of India, they are working against India. But the point here is, as per the author, in the past few years, there is not much of a difference between nation and the government. Please understand this. Nation and government are not the same. They are two different entities. However, in the past few years, as per the author, they are considered as the same. Meaning that if someone criticizes the government, that person is called anti-national, that you are criticizing the nation. But these are two different things altogether. And this is not correct as per the author. The civil society organizations are not even allowed to get the required funds. Most of the civil society organizations actually depend upon donations coming in from corporate, donations coming in from different parts of the world. But even that law has been made very, very tough. I'm sure all of you would have read about something called FCRA. Have you read about this? FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. I would be very sad if you said no, because we have discussed FCRA in the CNAs also multiple times. What is FCRA? In simple terms, if you run an NGO and you want donation from outside India, someone wants to contribute you or send you certain funds from outside India, you have to get a special license for that from the Home Ministry. The Home Ministry will check everything, will check all your paperwork. If everything is in place, only then the license will be given. Only then you will be allowed to take funds from outside India. The problem here is that license is renewed time and time again by the Home Ministry, and Home Ministry gets that decision to make whether they want to allow certain NGOs to get funds from outside or not. This is what the problem is, that the government has been imposing its wishes on NGOs as per the author. It is becoming very difficult for the NGOs and these kind of organizations to work. Taxes are also being imposed on them. The government is only supporting a few chosen organizations, and they are the ones who are getting most of the donations. Now, please understand here, when we read these kind of things, let's say when you read this statement, that government is only supporting few chosen civil society organizations which are close to the government and are receiving most of the donations as well. This is the opinion of the author. Please understand, when you read an opinion or op-ed article means it is the opinion of the author. That doesn't mean that it is a fact. It doesn't mean that everyone will agree to that. Some other people can write some very different kind of an article and someone can say, no, this is not true. So this is an opinion piece. When you read these kind of things, please do remember that. Don't think it is a fact. Don't think a report has proven that. It is just a viewpoint, or as students are saying, yes, when I say it's a viewpoint, it's an opinion. That is why it's called the op-ed article. That is an opinion. So please remember, whenever you read about editorials, these are just editorial views, and this is not really always a fact. Now, let's first discuss, why do you need a civil society organization? Is the government not enough? We already have the government. We have so many governments. We have government at the center level. We have governments at the state levels. We have the municipalities. We have the panchayats. And why do you need a civil society organization? Why do you even need an NGO? The answer to that is simple. The reason you need a civil society organization, or the reason you need an NGO, is that the government might not be enough. See, we are a huge country. We are a country of not just huge population, but also of huge size. Government cannot reach to every corner of the country. For that, if there are certain people who are held by other organizations, that is how the civil society organizations come in. The civil society organizations also become the voice of those people who are not being heard by the government. Lokpal Bill is a prime example of that. Or let's say you might agree to it, you might not agree to it, but the Farm Bill protest was also an example of that. Because of the farm law protest, the government was forced to take back the law. Now, you might agree with that, you might not agree with that. That's a different viewpoint altogether. But that is again an example of how civil society organizations are important, because they allow people to raise their voice collectively. Now, at present, as per the author, these are the problems in the civil society organization. First problem, their financial structure is not very sound. They are not getting a lot of funds. The government has put a lot of restrictions on them. Second problem, they are not able to impact the nation at large because the government is not giving them enough support. The government is putting a lot of hurdles in their working. And thirdly, the government is not consulting with them while making any policy as such. See, usually whenever the governments make policies or they make laws, it is expected that the government will consult these organizations. I'll give you a simple example. Okay? Have you heard of something called Pratham? Have you heard of something called Pratham? Or if you have not heard of Pratham, okay, no problem. You all would have heard of Amul at least. If you have not heard of Pratham, you all would have heard of Amul. Let's take both these examples. Let's take an example of Pratham first. So Pratham is an NGO that works in the field of education. So obviously, when the government is making a policy in the field of education, when the government is introducing a new kind of a law in the field of education, it is expected that the government will first consult with Pratham, because it's a huge NGO. They release the ASA report. They are very, very famous for their working in the education field. So government will consult them. Similarly, the government is, let's say, making a law in the dairy sector. If the government is introducing a new big policy in the dairy sector, then obviously the government should consult with Amul, because they are the ones who are working in this field. It is not to say that they will decide the policy, but government should consult them. Similarly, it is expected that the government should consult civil society organizations working in certain fields. If the government is making a law on environment, then environment related bodies should be consulted, so on and so forth. But as per the author, that is not happening. The government is not consulting any civil society organization, which is wrong. Now, what is a way forward? What can we do from here? As per the author, the first thing that can happen is these young activists who are working in these civil society organizations, they may or they should actually join political parties so that their voices can be heard. This is the first suggestion that the author has. That if you are working in a civil society organization and your voice is not being heard, maybe consider joining the political party. Second option, maybe ensure that they raise awareness amongst people, make sure that the common people are much more aware of their rights. And third, private philanthropies and companies also need to support these civil society organizations. Philanthropy means when you are very rich and you spend your own money on any social cause. That is philanthropy. Like Azim Premji spends a lot of his own personal wealth on things that he cares about. Bill Gates, Ratan Tata, etc. All these are famous philanthropists. Philanthropists, these companies should also not stop funding from civil society organizations, and they should help the government. This is the way forward as per the author. Now, this was the article. Let me also share with you some other important facts that you need to know from this related field. In India, we have something called the National Policy on a Volunteer Sector. See, every government realizes the fact that we need to have NGOs, we need to have civil society organizations, because they play a very, very important role in a country's progress. Poor people, people who don't know their rights, people who don't know, for example, how to approach the police, people who don't know how to approach the courts, etc. They need to be held, they need to be supported, and this is where these kind of organizations come into the picture. For this, the government has already made a national policy on volunteer sector, where the government has said that they will support these organizations for India's social, cultural and economic advancement. The government will help them in mobilizing, government will help them with research, training, etc. Government will also ensure that there is enough support from the side of the government and the private sector also for these organizations to flourish. So on one hand, we do have this kind of policy, but the author says that this is not happening. These are some of the pointers that you must remember. This kind of a question has been asked in GS2 in the earlier year as well. In GS2, you have a very simple, straightforward question about civil societies. The question is the role of civil societies, what do they do, their importance, etc. I'll give you some real examples that you can write in the answers. For example, number one, a lot of laws in India are implemented because of the civil societies. Manrega, right to education, right to food. All these laws are those laws which people are not very well aware of on the ground. So they are taught, they are made aware about this by these civil society organizations. So implementing a law made by the parliament is a major role played by them. Second, they also support those sectors which the states actually ignore. For a long time in India, many governments have ignored the rights of tribals, labor rights, also women rights, etc. have been ignored for a long time. Now we have a lot of laws about that, but they have been ignored for a long time. That is why all these organizations are important. Then it also makes sure that those organizations or those groups like the farmers groups, self-help groups, etc. that are working at the grassroots level, they also get enough help from the government, and in the end they act as pressure groups. There was someone who was asking me in the chat, what is a pressure group? See, pressure group in simple terms is a term used for a group that puts pressure on the government to either pass a certain law or a policy or not to pass a certain law or a certain policy. For example, the India Against Corruption movement was a pressure group. They pressurized the government to pass a law about the Lokpal. Similarly, the farm groups were acting as a pressure group, pressurizing the government to take back the farm laws. So these are pressure groups that put pressure on the government to either pass a certain law or a certain policy or not to pass a certain law or certain policy. These NGOs, civil society organizations, have also made changes in the society. A lot of them, for example, work to ensure that people don't believe in superstition, people become more rational. Now, if you are living in a city, you might not think of this like in this way, or you might not believe it, but in the rural areas, there is still a lot of superstition. You might still see every few weeks there will be a news story in the newspaper that people have killed themselves, someone killed their child. Why? Because they thought that the God will be happy. They have sacrificed the life of their child, they have sacrificed their own life because of superstition or black magic that they believed in. This doesn't happen in urban areas, but it still is prevalent in the rural areas. Those kind of superstitions, etc., are fought against by this civil society organization. They also promote environmentalism, they also promote other new initiatives of the government. They take forward the government initiative, be it the Swachh Bharat mission, be it the other missions of the government. So there are a lot of important things that the civil society organizations do. In a country such as India, they are extremely, extremely important. This brings us to the end of the first article. Let me take up a few comments from your side before we go ahead. Okay. Kishan is saying, it can be way forward that we should make an independent body for regulating FCRA and banning CSO power should be confined to judiciary. Ideally, yes, but the problem is we are not living in an ideal world. No government wants to give away power. Every government wants to take more powers. So yes, your suggestion on paper can be government should give away its power of FCRA, give this power to judiciary to decide the license, but in reality, it's very hard. No government wants to give away power unless judiciary itself comes in between. Okay, then isn't civil societies and NGOs creating hurdles in economic growth and development? It's an interesting debate. It really depends on which side of the story you are on. And for others also to understand, let me give an example of how it actually works. So there's a very famous NGO called Greenpeace. Now Greenpeace is, as the name suggests, is an NGO that works in the interest of the environment. They usually protest against any government initiative that is against the environment, that is harming the environment. So what happens is, let's assume the government of India decides that we want to build a dam. Now to build a dam, obviously they'll have to cut down a lot of trees, they'll have to displace a lot of people, environment will be harmed, etc. So this NGO Greenpeace will start protesting there. They will ask people not to vacate their land, not to listen to the government. Now there are two ways to look at it. You can look at it from the side of the government. The government says, for example, Greenpeace is deliberately doing this. They don't want India to develop. They don't want India's economic progress. Or you can look at it from the environment point of view, that they are doing this so that the environment is safeguarded. And Greenpeace, etc., does this in every country. It's not just India. So yes, there are two sides of the story. You can say they are harming India's, or they're at least slowing down India's economic progress. And the other side of the story is that no, they are working in the interest of India. So it really depends. Raju is saying achievements of CSO. As we discussed, CSO, civil society organizations, are responsible for introducing a lot of laws in India. Apart from the Lokpal bill, you can go back to Vishakha guidelines. The Vishakha guidelines, which are guidelines against sexual harassment at workplace, that was also given by the Supreme Court, but because the case was filed by these NGOs, the name of the NGO was Vishakha, so that again is an example of civil society organization. Okay, I'll take one or two more and then we'll go ahead. Preeti is saying, explain ASSAR report. So Preeti, ASSAR is basically an annual survey. This is an annual survey of education report. So the full form, as I said, is annual survey of education report. You might have seen in newspapers, there are headlines which say 50% of students in class 5 can't write ABCD, 70% of students in class 8 can't do addition, subtraction. You read those kind of headlines, right? Those headlines come from the ASSAR report. So ASSAR report is a report published by an NGO called Pratham. They basically do a survey of the entire country, schools, mainly in the rural areas, to see what is the level of education. So that is called the ASSAR report. It is considered as a very good source of letting other people know about the education level in India. Okay, let's go ahead then. let's move on to the second important article for the day. The second important article that we have here is based on the Media One news channel. Now, we did a video on this YouTube channel a few weeks back when the Supreme Court actually gave a decision on the Media One news channel. Now, what exactly is it? What is the Media One news channel? How does it work? Let's try and understand this. So basically, Media One is it's a Malayalam news channel, and this was banned by the government of India about 1 year back. So basically, the government of India did not renew the license of Media One. They said that Media One organization is what it is indulging in anti-national activities and we will not renew the license. So they went to the High Court to remove the ban. The High Court did not help them. Then they went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court finally did remove the ban. Many people, especially those who are from the media community, hailed the decision of the Supreme Court. Many people said Supreme Court has again made sure that the freedom of speech and expression is secure in India. Now, what exactly is this issue all about? Let's try and understand. So basically, the media channels, they are given licenses from the government of India, from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting for a certain number of years. And once that license comes to an end, they will have to go to government again to renew the license. That is the usual process. So when Media One went to the government of India to renew the license was not renewed. The government said you are indulging in anti-national activities. The government did not define what is anti-national activity over here, but the government said no, we will not renew your license. The claim of the channel was that because they were criticizing the government, because they were running news stories against the government said no, 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 we will not allow you, this is anti-national. Again, we'll go back to the same problem. The problem is that nation and government are not the same. If you criticize the government, that is good enough, that is fine. That should not be a cause of any concern. Anti-government should not means anti-national. But the problem is that is not true these days, and that is why the Media One news channel could not get the license. The court finally, in the Supreme Court, the license was given back, and the Supreme Court said that the government cannot misuse the term anti-national time and time again. Now, the author here is saying that the Supreme Court also in the past few years has been losing its credibility. For example, a lot of very important cases are pending in the Supreme Court for many years. Do you remember there was this huge protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act CAA? Do you remember that? I'm sure all of you remember. A few years back, there was such a huge protest against CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act. Before that, there was such a huge discussion about Article 370. Even before that, there was such a huge discussion on electoral bonds. Even today, opposition parties say electoral bonds should not be legal, they should be removed. All those big issues, Article 370, Citizenship Amendment Act, electoral bonds, all these big issues are pending in the Supreme Court for many years. Supreme Court is not even hearing the matter because they are just avoiding it. So as per the author, Supreme Court in the past few years has lost its credibility because they are not hearing important matters. And at least now they are showing the courage to take up matters which the government may not like. As per the author, the credit should also go to the new Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. He maybe is the one who is ensuring that all these kind of matters are now coming up. And this is why we have to also appreciate the Supreme Court. You would have seen how a few weeks back, Supreme Court also made changes in the appointment of the election commissioners. Remember, we discussed that in detail. Earlier election commissioner was just appointed by the president on the advice of the Council of Ministers. And now the Supreme Court has said that no, this will not happen now. We now are forming a 3-member committee to appoint election commissioners. So this again is an example, as per the author of the Supreme Court, actually regaining its power. In the past few years, Supreme Court has tried not to confront the government. Many Supreme Court judges may have given certain decision against the government, but they don't confront the government as such. But now with the Media One case, the court is directly confronting the center and making sure that excuse of anti-national or excuse of national security cannot be misused. This judgment, that is why, as per the author, will go a long way in ensuring that the freedom of speech and expression is safeguarded in India. Now, those who know what the case is, the Media One case, you can take a break for 2 minutes, join me back after 2 minutes. Those who don't know what the case is, let me quickly remind you what the case exactly was in the Media One issue. So the case was that this Media One news channel, as I said, it's a Malayalam language based news channel. It first got its license to start operation in 2011. Then it had to renew its license. Then when it got to the government to renew the license, the Ministry of INB said that no, we will not renew the license because you are indulging in anti-national activities. The government said that we believe that you also have links with Jamaat-e-Islami Hind, but the government could not give any proof as such. And that is why the media channel went off air. They went to the High Court also, they went to Kerala High Court, nothing happened. Then they also went ahead to the Supreme Court, and that is when the Supreme Court actually came up. Now, also, the law has to be very clear about what exactly is prohibited. That is also a problem. There is no specific law that says what content is prohibited, what is not prohibited. In this matter, most of the power is just given to the INB ministry. INB means Information and Broadcasting. So Information and Broadcasting Ministry has a lot of free hand in deciding what will be allowed and what will not be allowed. That is why they are the ones who decide which channel will get the license, which channel will not get the license, and this is also a big problem. Also, the Supreme Court in this judgment, when they took the side of Media One, they also criticized something called the sealed cover jurisprudence. Now, why did they criticize it? What exactly is this? Let's try and understand this, and please do listen to me very carefully. This is important for all of you. When this Media One case first came up in the Kerala High Court, Kerala High Court had to decide the matter, whether the government's argument that this channel is a security threat, whether it is true or not. So what the Kerala High Court did was, they asked the government of India, give us evidence. Why do you think that this Media One news channel is anti-national? And they asked the government that please submit the evidence in a sealed cover. Now, what is a sealed cover? Sealed cover basically means the judges said that write that in a letter, seal it so that only judges will be able to read. It will not be published in the media, no one will get to know about it, only the judges will read. That is the sealed cover issue. Now the problem here is, if, for example, let's take a very simple example, okay? Let's say that there are 100 students in the class right now, okay? And one of you submits your copy to me, and I have to check the copy. I give full marks to that student, and to the other students I give 0 to everyone. And now students will ask me, sir, can we see that person's answer? What did he write? We also want to learn. I will say, no, that is a sealed cover copy. You will not get to know what he wrote. Only I will get to know I have given him full marks. Full stop. This is the problem. The problem is, if the judges are the only ones reading it, then who would know what is written in that letter? There is no one who knows what is the evidence that the government gave to prove that the channel is anti-national. Only the judges will know. How will the lawyer argue against it? If the Media One lawyer doesn't even get to know what is written in that letter, what is the argument of the government, how will the lawyer argue against it? How will anyone say anything against it? This is the same way. I can give one student full marks, no one will ever get to know. And if you ask for his copy, I'll say, no, this is a sealed cover copy. You will never get to know. I am the teacher. I'm very happy with that copy. I'll give full marks, full stop. This is a problem. The judges cannot just say we will read it and we'll not share it with everyone. Kerala High Court did that, and Kerala High Court said, we are very happy with the explanation of the government. We will continue the ban. But they never told anyone what is the explanation. That is the problem of sealed cover. Now, the problem with this sealed cover is, who is to blame? The blame has to go to the Supreme Court, or sorry, Honorable Supreme Court. Let me not be in contempt of court. Sorry, sir. So the blame has to go to Honorable Supreme Court only, because they are the ones who started this practice. This sealed cover practice is not any law in India. It is not written anywhere. It is the Supreme Court, or the Honorable Supreme Court, let me say, who started this practice. Now, it was Supreme Court that started saying that no, we will decide how the evidence will be. We will decide if it will be in the sealed cover or not. And they started doing the sealed cover thing multiple times. Now, because the Supreme Court functions in the manner that the Chief Justice of India wants, the current Chief Justice of India does not like it, so he has criticized this. Earlier Chief Justices liked it because they were happy with it. Maybe the next Chief Justice will also like it. So it depends on who is the leader of the court. The current Chief Justice doesn't like it, so he has criticized this, that no, this sealed cover thing should not exist. As I said, it is not in the law. There is no specific law about sealed cover in India, but the Supreme Court does have the power to decide how evidence will be presented in the court. And under this power, the Supreme Court has decided that we will take certain evidence in sealed cover. The problem is when it starts to be misused, when it starts to be used in every single case, then what is the point of transparency? The entire transparency goes out of the window. That is the entire problem with the sealed cover thing. Supreme Court has criticized it, but it remains to be seen whether it will become a permanent feature or not. This was our second article. Before we move on to the third one from Nagaland, let me quickly take up a few comments once again. Kinaya Singh, can judiciary define what is anti-national so that the government can't misuse a term? Kinaya, if the question is, can the judiciary define? Yes, judiciary can do everything. Honorable judiciary can do everything. But will they not? It depends upon them. There is nothing that the judiciary can't do, full stop. They can decide from tomorrow onwards, day in India will be 23 hours and not 24. Or let's round it off to 25 hours because we like it that way. So they can do it. Will they or won't they? I don't know. It depends upon them. Okay. Then, Kishan, let's not jump on to GDPR and EU from the topic. It is very far off. Let's remain within the confines of what we are discussing. When we are discussing right to privacy, etc., then we'll go to GDPR and data protection. Lala saying, can they declare a man a woman? Again, if your question is, can they? Yes, they can. Will they? I don't know. So it depends on what your question is. Okay. Then I have a question. Someone asked me, I can't see the name, why civil society organizations don't take part in politics actively. It's not that they don't. For example, it really depends on how you define civil society organizations. For example, the Sangh, the RSS, you can call it a civil society organization. They do take almost an active part in politics. So it really depends. Then I have a question. What is populist autocracies? Populist in simple terms means when you take decisions which the people will like. Doesn't mean if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, doesn't matter. If people will like that we are giving free of cost petrol to everyone, then the government will give free of cost petrol to everyone. That is called a populist government. Autocracies basically means a government where only a few people decide most of the things. So you can combine the two. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article is from Nagaland, especially with respect to the municipal elections in Nagaland. Now, what is happening here in municipal elections of Nagaland? Let me tell you very short what is the issue all about so that all of you know and you can understand. See, the issue is very simple. All of you would have read about the 74th Amendment Act, right? The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act that talks about the municipalities, right? Now, as you know, in the 74th Amendment Act that talks about the municipality, it is compulsory to give 1/3 reservation to women, right? So 1/3 reservation for women is compulsory. But the problem is Nagaland does not want it. They do not agree with this. Nagaland is perhaps the only state in India that still does not have this 1/3 women reservation for municipalities. Now, what exactly is the case here? Why has it happened? Let's try and understand this. So basically what has happened is Nagaland is saying, or the tribal groups in Nagaland are saying, that we have been given a special status in the constitution under Article 371A. So Article 371A gives special status to Nagaland, under which it says that the culture, the tradition, the rituals of Nagaland, for example, they will not be interfered with. The parliament will not make any law that changes the old customs, ritual, traditions. Okay, simple. Nagaland tribes are saying that our ritual, our custom is that women do not take part in decision making. I am not saying this, okay, so don't be angry with me. This is what the Nagaland tribes are saying. So Nagaland tribes are saying that our tradition, our ritual, our custom is that women do not take part in decision making, they do not take part in governance. So giving 1/3 reservation to women will be against Article 371A, and we will not allow this. This is the entire issue. Whenever the Nagaland government has tried to have elections of municipality in the state, there have been so much protest that people have even died. Do you know that? So it's not a small matter for them. It's such a huge matter that there have been violent clashes. People have actually died because people don't want to give this 1/3 reservation to women. Now, Supreme Court obviously has interfered. Supreme Court has said, no, we will not allow this. Supreme Court has said that no, 1/3 women reservation is compulsory under 74th Amendment Act. You have to ensure this. But even then, even after the Supreme Court verdict, the government of Nagaland is saying, no, we cannot abide by the Supreme Court. We will abide by our own customs and rituals. So Nagaland government has openly, please listen to this, Nagaland government has openly been in contempt of the Supreme Court now, because rather than abiding by the order of the Supreme Court to conduct municipal elections with 1/3 reservation, they have again cancelled the election. They have said, no, we will not allow this to happen because our local tribes will not be happy with the 33% reservation. This is the crux of the matter. As I said, Nagaland is probably the only state right now that doesn't have this 1/3 women reservation in the local urban body, means the municipal elections, because they are saying Article 371A gives us a right to preserve our religious, social practices, our customs, laws, etc. And women have traditionally not been a part of decision-making bodies, and that is why we will not allow 1/3 women reservation. Now again, you might like this, you might not like this, but this is what a fact is. Now, Nagaland did try to conduct these municipal polls earlier, but there has always been a lot of clashes. In 2004, they conducted municipal polls without any reservation for women. Then later on, they changed their law. They said, okay, from the next election onwards, we will give reservation to women. But ever since the government has announced reservation for women, since 2006, no election has been possible. Let me repeat. Since 2006, ever since the Nagaland government has announced the 1/3 women reservation, no municipal election has been possible in Nagaland. The state assembly is saying that we should be exempted from the 1/3 women reservation. The reason being that our customs and rituals are different. It has led to a lot of violence as well. There have been multiple attempts made to conduct elections for municipalities in Nagaland, but none of the attempts have been successful. Even the Supreme Court giving order to the Nagaland government has not been successful. And this is what the problem is. Now, no one knows what is the next step forward. No one knows what will the Supreme Court do. Would the Supreme Court now take action against Nagaland government? Would the Supreme Court ask some other body to conduct election? No one knows. But because of all this protest, the elections for municipalities in Nagaland are still being delayed. Now, in Nagaland also, obviously there are certain women groups that are against this. So there is a group in Nagaland, there are multiple women groups in fact in Nagaland. There is a group called Naga's Mother Group or Naga's Mother Association. They are in favor of this 1/3 reservation to be given to them. So it's not that all the Naga tribes are in one view. There are certain Naga tribes, especially the Naga tribes that are dominated by women, which are women dominated groups. They obviously would want the 1/3 reservation to be given to them. The matter is about the interpretation of Article 371A, and as you know, whenever there's a matter of constitutional interpretation, the Supreme Court of India has to decide. Whether the Supreme Court of India takes certain action or not remains to be seen. There are a few details about Article 371 I would like to share with you. Obviously, you all would have read this already in Indian polity, but just to remind you, Article 371A was introduced later on. So I hope all of you know, whenever you see any article number that has a capital letter, not small, capital letter, that means it was introduced later on after an amendment. When you see 371A, that means it was not in the original constitution, it was introduced later on as an amendment. Also, please understand this, and I really hope you know, when you are writing in the article or when you're writing in the mains examination, please understand 371B and 371B are very different. They are not the same. Similarly, 371A and 371A are not the same. They are very different. Please do remember this. 371 capital A is a separate article altogether, and 371 small a is a part of Article 371. So in the mains examination, when you are writing these kind of facts, please make sure you are very, very careful, because even one single letter here and there, even one single mistake in capital or small letters can actually ruin your entire effort. And in the mains examination, even half a mark or 1 mark can be the difference between you being an IAS officer or you being an IPS officer. So please do remember that. Okay? Even by mistake, please don't commit this mistake of capital and small. Okay? Now, as I said, Article 371A was introduced later on in the Constitution through 13th Amendment Act of 1962. Now, please understand this. Whenever you read about post-independence history, so for the prelims examination, you only read about the modern India history, medieval India, ancient India. But for mains examination, you also have to read about the post-independence history. So post-independence, the first few years were very crucial for India. We mainly read about the trouble in Jammu and Kashmir, but what we ignore is the fact that we also had trouble in one more very important area, that was Nagaland. Not a lot has been written or discussed about Nagaland. We discuss a lot about the Jammu Kashmir issue, but we don't discuss a lot about Nagaland. But in Nagaland also, there was very violent insurgency all through the 1950s. Very, very violent. It was very difficult for our armed forces to get a control over Nagaland, because a lot of groups in Nagaland said that no, we want to be separate, we are not a part of India. Because of that, the government had a very, very tough time in ensuring that people of Nagaland are also given the equal rights. That is why the 13th Amendment Act was introduced after there was consultation between Naga's People's Convention and the Government of India. It was a kind of a compromise formula that, okay, you stop demanding that you want to get separated. In return, we will give you a special status. What is a special status? We will ensure that your customs, rituals are not interfered with. You can live in whatever way that you want. So the Article 371A was a kind of a compromise formula that came up after this 1960 convention. It was not in the original constitution. And the Naga tribes are saying that we cannot let this special status go. This was the third article for the day from the mains examination point of view. Now we move on to some articles from the prelims examination point of view. We have 3 of them. The first most important one is a news from Arunachal Pradesh. It's a small news, but it's an interesting news. Andhra Pradesh government is hosting a very important Buddhist summit at a very important place. The place is called Zemithang. Now, please excuse me if my pronunciation is not up to the mark, but Zemithang is the name of the place where this important Buddhist conference is being held. Why is this place important? This is the place where the 14th Dalai Lama, when he was given refuge in India, when he flew away from Tibet, he entered India. This was the place where he first stopped. This is very near to Tawang. That is why it's a very significant place for Tibet, very significant place for India as well. This is the place in Arunachal Pradesh where this event was organized. Obviously, it irritated China. China does not want any important event to be held in Arunachal Pradesh, especially the event that is related to Dalai Lama in any way whatsoever. But this event was organized in the Zemithang area in the Panchang Valley. Please do remember this place. As I said, the historical significance is this is the place where Dalai Lama took the first stop when he entered India from Tibet in 1959 when he took refuge here. Zemithang means sand valley, and the people who are living here are named as the Panchangpa, means people who gave up the sin. I'll show you the location also. As you can see here, this is the map demarcation. This is where Tibet starts, Tibet or China, whatever you want to call. This is the border, the McMahon line. This is Zemithang. This is the place. As you can see here, very, very close to Tawang. Please do remember the name of this place. Also, just a bit of facts about Dalai Lama. As you know, Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader of Tibet. So, Dalai Lama is a title given to the person who holds the post. So, for example, when the next person becomes Dalai Lama, that person will also be called the Dalai Lama. So, the real name would be something different. Dalai Lama is the name of the honorary post. So, for example, the real name of Dalai Lama, that is the current Dalai Lama, who is the 14th one, is Tenzin Gyatso. As you know, Dalai Lama is considered as a spiritual leader of Tibet. It is considered that if Dalai Lama announces or if he agrees that Tibet is a part of China, then Tibet would officially become part of China. That is why Chinese have always been taking a lot of deep interest in Dalai Lama. In fact, the first problem between India and China started before 1962 war because China thought India is interfering in Tibet by giving refuge to Dalai Lama. So India's decision to give refuge to Dalai Lama in 1959, that is said to be the beginning of India-China relationship becoming bad, because China always thought that India is interfering in Tibet by giving refuge to Dalai Lama, which we should not have done. Okay, we have 2 more articles to go. Let me take up a few questions once again before we take up these 2 articles. Jayashree Singh, is this a response because China renamed the places? I don't think so, because this is an event organized by the Arunachal Pradesh government, not by the center government as such, but this may be. May or may not be. The government has not said anything like that officially, so it's none of our business, or we can't for sure say this was the response, but the government has not said anything like that. Okay. Then Himanshi saying, why are some states and territories given special status? There are different reasons for that. As I told you, the reason for Nagaland was very different. Let me try and give an example. So when, let's say, there are certain kids who demand from their parents that we want to go, let's say, on a vacation for 10 days. We want to go to Switzerland on a vacation for 10 days. What do the parents say? Parents say, okay, don't go to vacation, let's go to water park next week. That is a compromise formula, that we can't give you what you want because that is extreme. But what we will do is we'll give you something. We'll take you to water park for 1 day. Similarly, if tribes in Nagaland are demanding we want to be a separate country altogether, so the government will say, no, we'll not give you separate country altogether, but we'll give you some special status within India. So that's a kind of a compromise formula. Okay. Then Why are they still getting special status? Because the special status that was given to Nagaland was not temporary. That was not supposed to be that we'll take it away after some years. That was always supposed to be permanent. Okay, I'll take one more before we go ahead. Shunya is in difference between Schedule 5, Schedule 6 status. As you can see clearly, Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 are very different. Schedule 6 is mainly for the northeastern states. Also, the states under Schedule 6 get a lot more power. For Schedule 5, for example, if you look at Schedule 5 states, they only have the Tribe Advisory Council. So they can only advise what kind of laws, etc. to make. But if you look at Schedule 6 states, they have their own autonomous district council. They can make their own laws, not just advise. So Schedule 6 states are given more autonomy, more power as compared to Schedule 5 states. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article that we have is from Nepal, a small country that right now seems to be stuck between three big powers. India, that is us, China, that has taken a keen interest in Nepal because of India, and another interesting country that has taken some interest in Nepal, that is the US. Now, Nepal, if you look at Nepal politics, it's very interesting politics. They have a lot of political parties. Almost never will you see one single political party getting a majority. They always have coalition governments. So for example, right now also, they have a coalition government. Push Kamal Dehel Prachand, who is a prime minister. He is a prime minister, but he is a leader of the third largest party only. So there are two parties that are bigger than his party in the parliament, but because of all that coalition, he has become the prime minister. He was handling the foreign ministry as well, but now he has given foreign ministry to the other person in the coalition. The problem here is Nepal right now is stuck between these three. Now what exactly is this issue? Let's talk about that. Now if you talk about Nepal, Nepal has always had a very deep historical connection with India. We have open borders. Citizens of Nepal are eligible for most of the jobs in India. Many citizens of Nepal are even working in the Indian Army. Many of them have taken up a lot of jobs here. However, since past few years, India-Nepal relation has not been very good. There are various reasons for that. Nepal made its new constitution. When they made their new constitution, there were news reports that India was not happy with it. Because Indian origin people in Nepal, as you know, Nepal has people called the Madhesis. If you look, if I, in my very bad drawing, if I draw a map of Nepal, and I'm sorry if there's anyone from Nepal watching, please excuse my drawing. Let's say if this is the map of Nepal, let's just assume. And if you look at the southern part, this part here, this is a part where the most fertile land of Nepal exists, and again I'm sorry for that, no offense. This is where the most fertile part exists, and the people living here are the Madhesis. They are the Madhesis. Madhesis are deeply connected to India. A lot of their relatives, family relations are with India. Now what happened was Nepal a few years back made their new constitution. They redrew the boundaries of different provinces in Nepal, and the Madhesis were very unhappy. They thought that they are being divided in such a manner that their majority is being taken away. Since then, India-Nepal relation has not been that great. As you know, Nepal is a landlocked country. They don't have access to a seaport. They are dependent on India for most of their trade. Every single day, milk, oil, vegetable, fruit, everything Nepal needs comes from India every single day. So if India stops sending these things even for 2-3 days, there will be a lot of problems in Nepal. And this did kind of happen when this controversy about the new constitution came into being. India was not happy with the constitution. That gave a chance to China to start interfering in Nepal. Because China said, don't worry, whatever you need, we will give it to you. But the problem is, when you look at the map of Nepal, see if this is Nepal again, this is where Tibet starts, right? So this part will be Tibet, this part will be India. Now the Tibet or China, whatever you want to call it, sorry Xi Jinping. So let's say China or Tibet, whatever. Now the problem here is you can say that if India is not sending help to Nepal, China can send it, right? Because in the map, you will see Tibet, China are connected to this. But the problem is, map does not tell you the entire story. When you look at a map, it is a 2D paper map. What you don't see is over here there are huge mountains. and Nepal cannot possibly expect all this help from China. The geography, the topography of this area is that the only natural country that can help Nepal is India with all these things. They may seem to be very close to China geographically, but there are so many mountain ranges that China cannot connect to Nepal in a way that India can. So Nepal also knows that they cannot leave India, number one. Secondly, there was also very interesting, and you all know there was a controversy about the map. We'll not go into map controversy in detail. The simple issue was, as you know, when India decided that Jammu and Kashmir would be divided into two parts, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, when such a decision is taken, the government of India releases a new official map. So when government of India released a new official map after Jammu and Kashmir was reorganized, Nepal objected, saying that, oh, some areas are our areas, why are you showing them in your map? So those kind of map controversies also came up. Over here, there is one very interesting personality that you should know about. That personality is the ex-Prime Minister of Nepal, Mr. K.P. Oli. So Mr. K.P. Oli, the ex-Prime Minister of Nepal, was at the center of controversy. He was in power. He was the one who was considered as very close to China. And there are news reports about it, I'm not lying. If you Google, you will get to know there was also a role of Chinese ambassador to Nepal. Apparently, there was a lady, Chinese lady, who was their ambassador to Nepal, and this Chinese lady was said to be in very close relationship with Mr. K.P. Oli, that is the Nepal Prime Minister of that time. It was said that because of Mr. K.P. Oli, because of the pressure he has, because of China, he is the one who is starting all these controversy about the map, etc. So India-Nepal relationship became considerably bad when K.P. Oli was the Prime Minister. However, that has changed now. We have a new government, relationship has become better. But where has US come in the picture? China has come in the picture because they want to create pressure on Nepal. They want to have very strong relationship with every Indian neighboring country. That is the role of China. What is the role of US? US actually has a program called MCC. US has a program called MCC. It is called Millennium Challenge Corporation. This is a program under which the US helps developing countries, least developed countries, by giving them loans or free of cost money so that they can build infrastructure. Nepal was the one who applied for this loan. Nepal applied to US that we want to be a part of MCC. US said, why not? We will come help you. Why? Because US is also interested in every country where China is interested. It is all these countries want to be focused on one single point. Where India is interested, China becomes interested. Where China is interested, US automatically becomes interested. So all these are actually coming in together. This is where all three now have combined. Now what has happened is, look at it from Nepal's point of view. Look at it from Nepal's point of view. See, when you are poor and when you are not developed, you want help from everyone. As simple as that. If you look at it from their point of view, they need help from India, yes. Because as we discussed, India is the only country which can sell them food, oil, all the things that they need. We allow them to use the Kolkata port for their import and export. Most of Nepal's import-export goes through India only. So they can't go away from India. With China, they have signed the Belt and Road Initiative because who doesn't like money coming in? Everyone likes money. When China said, don't worry bro, we'll invest money in you. Tell me how much you want. Nepal said, yes, why not? Give us the money. So they have become a part of Belt and Road Initiative also. Now, with US also, they saw money coming in. They said, okay, we will take $500 million from US also. So Nepal right now is actually taking money from wherever they can. The problem here is these two cannot coexist, right? Ever since Nepal has decided to take this money from US, guess who is angry? China is angry. Obviously, China will not like US money coming in. China wants that, no, our money should be the only money that is in Nepal so that we can pressurize them. That is the problem. So Nepal is kind of stuck between all these three. Now with India, what is happening is, because India-Nepal relationship has gone slightly bad, the new Prime Minister wants to improve the relationship. But Indian government is not really talking to Nepal very closely. New Prime Minister, Mr. Prachand, ever since he has come to power, he is waiting for an invitation from India. He wants to come to India, but India is just not giving him invitation. He spoke to media and he was saying, I will be visiting Delhi soon. But soon when? When he will be invited, but he has not been invited so far. So we are waiting for the correct opportunity to invite him. He has not been invited to India. But Nepal right now wants to get the best of all worlds. Nepal doesn't want to choose between any of these. And you will understand from their point of view. See, you should not make fun of an individual or a country that is not economically strong. It is very similar to what India was when we became independent in 1947. One of the reasons why we chose the non-aligned movement was because we wanted help from both USSR and USA. So you might laugh at Nepal right now, but you have to understand that the situation of poor countries is the same. They want to get help from as many countries as they can, as simple as that. We got weapon from USSR, we took it. We got food grains from USA under PL480, we took that also when we were independent. So the same is the case here as well. It's not that Nepal is very different. As I said, they are a part of China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. Since 2017, they have been getting some help from China. India was also trying to help them. India buys a lot of electricity from Nepal. So in Nepal, there are many hydroelectric projects that India has built. India said, you have rivers, we'll make projects on these rivers. Whatever electricity is generated, you take electricity, remaining we will buy from you. We'll give you money in return for that. So India buys electricity from Nepal as well. That is a very crucial part of relationship between India and Nepal. Because Nepal is not just getting all these help, equipment or food, oil, petrol from India, they are also getting money from India because India is buying all that electricity. This is the MCC that I was talking about, Millennium Challenge Corporation, under which US and Nepal are connected. Please do read about this. This was an initiative by US from 2004 to give foreign aid to those countries which need development, etc. Nepal applied to them. Nepal said that we want help from this, and under this, Nepal has been granted $500 million, mainly for infrastructure development, for building of roads, bridges, etc. This is a kind of initiative that many other countries done. For example, Japan has something called ODA. Do you know that? Japan has something called ODA, Official Development Assistance. Japan under this gives a lot of loan to India. In fact, India is the largest recipient of ODA help from Japan. So many other countries run this, just like US is running the MCC. The US-Nepal relationship started in 2011, and then in 2017, this $500 million deal was signed for Nepal's infrastructure development. Obviously, as I said, China is not happy with this. China is saying that no, you promised us, Nepal, that you will not take money from anyone else. You should not have done this. You should have taken money from us only. But again, this is an issue that has not been resolved so far. Coming to the last news for the day, that is from Yemen. As we know, Yemen has a very brutal, very violent civil war going on for a long time. We have discussed about this earlier as well, how the Yemen government is being supported by Saudi Arabia, and the ones fighting against them, that is the Houthis, they are being supported by Iran. As we had discussed, Saudi and Iran had a peace deal negotiated by China. So now these two also are trying to see if they can have a peace deal. Recently, there was exchange of prisoners. So Houthis, the prisoners that they have taken, they are returning the prisoners, and Yemen government is also returning the prisoners. So this is the first step towards any peaceful consideration, that is the exchange of prisoners that is happening. This peace deal between Yemen and Houthis is also because of UN intervention. One of the very few times that UN has actually did something good. One of the very few times that UN has actually tried to have a peace deal and they have been successful. The name of this agreement, and please do remember this is important for prelims, name of this agreement is Stockholm Agreement, agreement that is signed between Yemen and the Houthis. Under this agreement, there are three things that will happen. Number one, the Hudaya Agreement, that means ceasefire will happen in the main cities. Second, prisoner exchange agreement, prisoners are now being exchanged. And there's also the Taiz Agreement, under which a joint committee will be formed by the UN and the civil society in Yemen to negotiate a peace deal between all those who are involved. From the prelims point of view, I want you to remember about the location of Yemen. I showed you the map earlier as well. I'll show you the map today again about Yemen specifically. Also, a bit of history about Yemen. How did the problem started in Yemen? Yemen civil war goes back to 2011 at the rise of the Arab Spring. This is when there was turmoil in the government. There were two different factions that were formed and they started fighting. The main group fighting against the Yemen government is the Houthis. We have discussed about Houthis earlier as well. They are being supported by Iran, while the Yemenis government is supported by Saudi Arabia. Now, what exactly is Arab Spring? Arab Spring, in simple terms, was a spring of all these people-led protests in the Arab world. Most of the Arab world was ruled by certain dictators or governments that were in power for many decades. One by one, people started to rise and they started to ensure that the powers actually surrender. Most of these countries, starting with Tunisia, Tunisia was the first country where Arab Spring took place. Then it was Libya, then Egypt, Syria, Yemen, Bahrain, in all these countries. People started rising, people started protesting against their own government to make sure that governments that are running for a lot of years change. Many dictators had to resign. This also brings me to your homework for today. Your homework for today is you have to search and tell me who was the person who got a Nobel Peace Prize related to Arab Spring. Related to Arab Spring, there was someone who got the Nobel Peace Prize also. And not just this, after getting the Peace Prize, that person again came in the news because of opposite reasons. There were demand that Peace Prize should be taken back from him. Please do search about that and let me know in the comment section because this is important. This is the map of Yemen. Please do see which are the neighboring countries of Yemen. From the prelims point of view, Saudi Arabia, Oman. Also see what are the water bodies that are near Yemen, that is the Bab al-Mandab, the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden as well. This brings me to the end of today's session. I hope all of you do work on your homework and do leave it in the comment section. Make sure that this entire issue of Arab Spring, the Nobel Peace Prize, don't just read about one fact of one single person. Read an entire thing about how did it happen and why did it happen, because it is very, very important for all of you. There are a couple of practice questions for you. As always, try and write answers to this also in the mains examination. Thank you so much for watching. Do join us tomorrow 10 a.m. for the next session of the Hindu Analysis. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.